It is 5 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. The meeting of the Carver Select Board for Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022. This meeting is being cablecast by Area 58 Community Access Media, Channel 15, and will be posted by Area 58 on YouTube as soon as possible. There are openings on several committees. Please refer to the Select Board page on our website for a listing and application. If we could all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Hoffman, if you could read our community prayer.
Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that make us all that we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially, we lift our prayers for all of our citizens of the community that have been allowed to serve, that they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek. And keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. All right, first item on our agenda this evening is citizens' participation. Are there any members of the public that would like to address our board? I don't see any, so we will move along to our next item, which is the appointment of special police officers Robert Pike and Cheryl Rizzuto. And I believe we have Chief Dufely with us. Chief, if you'd step up. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me, as always. Appreciate it. Just prepared a little written thing and get through this quickly. Thank you. So again, thank you for having me here. Tonight, I'd like to request the appointment of 2 additional special police officers. As we've discussed in the past, special police officers bolster the number of officers who are available to work police details, controlling traffic at road and construction sites, and providing security at the fair in Edaville. Special police officers do not work patrol shifts. They must purchase their own uniforms and must maintain their own required yearly in-service training. Special police officers must have a minimum of the MPTC Reserve Academy for training. Special police officers are not paid full-time officers, but rather receive compensation by working paid details. Carver PD, like most police departments, is experiencing an issue in being able to provide enough officers to work traffic details. Our full-time staff cannot always fill all the open details. Therefore, we must rely on special police officers to supplement our numbers. Traffic details are an essential function of the police department, whether keeping the motoring public safe as they travel through construction zones or providing security at Kingridge's Fair or Edaville. We must be able to provide officers to perform these duties. Recent changes in the law regarding certification have made it difficult to find individuals able and willing to perform these duties. It is imperative to maintain a number of special police officers to be able to accomplish the necessary work. In order to do that, we have identified 2 candidates for possible appointment. Both have completed their MPTC required basic training and attend yearly in-service training to maintain their proficiency. Both have worked within public safety for years. The 2 candidates tonight are Robert Pike, who is currently as a special police officer with the town of Middleborough, and he's worked as a seasonal police officer in Falmouth for many years, as well as serving as a special natural resource officer in Barnesville. He's also a retired lawyer, and he has some ACO training as well, animal control officer training. The second candidate, Deputy Cheryl Rizzuto, is currently a deputy sheriff with the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department. She has also completed the MPTC Reserve Academy. After completing that academy in 2020, she joined the Sheriff's Department as a deputy. In that capacity, she has worked numerous traffic details and provided security watching prisoners in the hospital. She's also the wife of one of our police sergeants, Dennis Rizzuto. I would like to respectfully request the Honorable Board appoint both candidates as special police officers within the town of Carver to assist us with traffic details and such.
All right, good. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to appoint officers Pike and Rizzuto as special police officers?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Chief, how many special police officers do you have right now?
If we had them on, we'll have 8 at this time.
And is that the targeted level that you'd like to be at, or is it going to be at 10?
Well, it's a great question. We're probably going to be back here in the next few meetings looking for more. As I mentioned in my statement, we, as many departments, are having trouble filling pay details right now. When they passed police reform law, they've eliminated, you can't have any more reserve officers go to the reserve academy. There's no more reserve academy, so no new ones can come into the system. Several people who've been doing it for a while have decided to opt out because of the training requirements that they're putting on. An officer who's a reserve officer now has to complete what's called a bridge academy, which is an additional 200 hours of training. Some of these people don't have time in their full-time lives to be able to complete that, so we've lost people like that. Walter Benoit, we did his retirement the other day, so we're down him. Other departments are just like ours. The Mattapoisett Police Department is having a tough time filling full-time police slots and is actually having to order day shift officers to go out and assist with road details because they don't have the bodies to fill the details. This is going to continue. This trend's going to continue in the next few years. I think it's going to be very problematic. I'm trying to grab any that we have that are currently still in the system that we can use, at least for the next 5 years or so, because when we can't fill it with full-time and we can't fill it with our specials, we go to out-of-town departments, and we're having very little success in filling those details. So much so that 3 or 4 weekends back, we had a road race come through town that we needed 4 officers to work. A Saturday detail is a pretty lucrative detail to work on the weekend. We were able to get 1. I came in to work it because we had no one else to work it, and we couldn't just shut the road race down. And I don't mind helping out. Everybody makes a little bit of money, but the reality of the situation is we're going to have a problem, and if we don't keep putting these people on. So it doesn't cost the town. It does cost that. It costs the town $120 a year to put them on in our system that you use to fill details. But again, they have to pay their own expenses, their own uniforms, all the rest, and their own training. So to have more is certainly better than have less, because we got the fair coming up in the fall. If they've got our patch on them, they're more easy for me to say, you're out there working, than if it's a Middleborough person or a Wareham person. The ones we're getting from the Sheriff's Department, they can continue to work as Sheriff's deputies as well, but they work for us. The person's coming from Middleborough, he's been working over there for a while. He's just looking for another town to be part of, because he's trying to get work as well. And they both have worked in our town a lot. So they both have to wait until they get called the 3rd tier when they call out of town, and then they have to go through their list in that town to get here. But when I drive in the parking lot, I see their cars here working, and that's why I asked them to come on board with us, because we need people who are going to work the jobs. We're actively, not advertising, but we're looking for other people in that category that can come and work for us to do that, because we cannot fill it with the current 17 officers we have and the current number of specials that we have. So.
And you stated that I think they get paid, their services get paid by third parties because they're details?
Yes.
It's not on
It's
the
all,
operating
yeah,
budget?
all details. Sometimes the town pays them if we get to them, but there's a town rate for them, if our officers work for the town, the DPW or the school, they get paid their overtime rate because it's past their 40 hours. If a special does, there's a set town rate that's not equal to the detail rate that they get paid at. It's about 44 an hour. So those are all set there. So we actually save money when they work for the town as well. And both of these two people bring extra things to the table other than just working details. We're going to let them work details and make $55 an hour, but they both have skills that the department can use. Mr. Pike is trained as an animal control officer, so we may be able to use him for some of that work. And Cheryl Rizzuto is a deputy sheriff through the Sheriff's Department, and being a sworn police officer, she can watch a female prisoner in the cell block or at the hospital if we need to. Currently, we don't have a lot of females to do that. We have matrons that come in and watch them in the cell block, but if they have to go to the hospital, we have to send a matron and a police officer. With her, we could just send her. So they both bring something to the table that, in addition to their ability to work traffic details. So I believe it's a win-win for us in these situations, and we're looking for more people like that that will help us to have a win-win.
Right.
If that makes sense and answers your question.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you.
Chief, if you don't mind holding on for a couple of minutes, because we have a couple of other items that involve your department as well. But our next item on the agenda is to set hours for early voting, and we have the town clerk, Kara Dayhill, here. So if Kara, if you wouldn't mind stepping up and joining us as well. Chief, and that's fine, wherever.
She wants to be able to work.
Thanks for coming in tonight, Kara.
Good evening.
And before we get started, Mr. Fennessy, just a question for you. So I notice on the agenda that we have an item to set hours for early voting, but we don't have another meeting scheduled until December 6th. So do you think it would be within the scope of the article to set hours for the town the primary election as well?
It
in
is,
this
'cause
article?
all this references the primary.
Okay.
So you can set the primary hours as well as the early
Yes,
voting.
I'll have a warrant too for you, you guys. I'll have the
Okay.
warrant done. It's just everything's hitting right now at once.
That's fine. Does that work for you as well, Ms.
That
Dale?
works. I do
Okay.
know the hours, so I can at least give you the time and the time that it runs to.
Okay, so I think, well, why don't you go over the hours for early voting?
Okay,
And,
so the hours for early voting, it's going to start on the 27th, which is a Saturday. The new Votes Act requires that we hold early voting hours at least on one weekend day. So we chose Saturday because it's the last day to register to vote. So the hours are going to be 10 to 4 on that day. So it's a 6-hour day for a municipality our size for that day. And then generally, for the remainder of the week following, we have Sunday off, and then it resumes on Monday and continues through Friday. It would be regular town hall hours, so 8 to 4, 8 to 7 on the Tuesday, and then 8 to 4 for Wednesday and Thursday, and then 8 to 12 on the Friday.
Okay, and I assume you'll be posting these on the website?
I'm going
so
to
everyone-
post them on the website as well, yeah. The state already got their copy. And the election itself, which is the day after Labor Day, so the timing for all this is, it's tight, it's tough for everybody.
What is the date?
It's going to be the 6th, which is a Tuesday, and the hours would be 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Those are standard across the state.
Okay. All right. And Mr. Fennessy, again, you see no issue with us approving the hours for the primary election at this vote as well? Okay. Is there a motion from the board to approve the hours Ms. Cahill, Ms. Dayhill has outlined?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Anything else from you, Ms. Dayhill?
No, other than everybody sending in postcards, and we're cross-referencing. We found that the absentee applications, that we have duplicates, so it's very time-consuming. That's what I've been doing for the last 3 hours, is cross-referencing to make sure we don't send out 2 ballots. So hopefully, eventually, the state works something out so that we just have one way to vote by mail, and I'll be happy.
Okay.
That's,
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
thank you.
And so the next item on our agenda,
Thank you.
why
do you
don't
want
you
me to stay?
hang on for
Oh, okay,
1
great.
minute?
Sure.
So the next item on our agenda is to approve the police officers in the roster for the 9/6/22 primary election, and to defer the responsibility back to the police chief. And I think this is a new thing for us.
It was part of
correct?
the new Votes Act as well, where the state has decided to turn over the appointment to the select board, or if it was a city, a mayor, and what other municipalities have done, because the chief will tell you his assignments to that are based on union rules, and I usually don't know who I'm going to get until a couple of days. He usually doesn't know who they're going to give us for a few days before. So it makes it difficult, I think, for you guys to just appoint 2 people or 3 people. And he knows what the shifts are better than all of us. I would prefer to defer it back to him. Many towns have done the same thing. And by him allowing you to have access to his entire roster, you're basically just approving his roster and letting him continue to use his discretion to give us what we need.
I think that makes complete sense. Chief, you have no issues with us passing that responsibility on to you?
No, not at all. Thank
All
you.
right. All right, is there a motion on this?
I move we pass on the roster for the police officers for the 9/6/22 primary election to the police chief.
All right. Second?
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? No? Hearing none? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you both. We appreciate you
Thank
coming in
you.
tonight.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on our agenda is our Select Board and Town Administrator goals and objectives. And we're very happy to have Mark Rogers back with us this year. We appreciated the job you did last year. I think everybody on the board felt that you did a a really excellent job. We all
Well,
enjoyed
thank
it.
you.
So we're happy you came back. And just quickly, I did pull out last year's goals and objectives, and we had 3 items that everyone on the board agreed needed to be done. One was continue to improve the communication path from the town administrator to the select board. Another was communication expectations with select board members and the town administrator. And the third was to encourage the maintenance of current positive morale and spirit of cooperation among town employees. And I think speak for myself, I think all 3 of those pretty much occurred. I don't know if you'd all agree, but I think the 3 of those have all occurred. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. And with that, Mr. Rogers, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Well, excellent. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Great. So I was looking over first of all, thank you for this. It's fun for me. I love doing it. I called Bob first and said, can I be casual? So if anybody's offended, blame him. And, it's August, right? So anyway, thanks for this opportunity. And, I was taking a look at this goals and objectives from last year, this goals and objectives, which I think all of you responded to over the last couple of weeks, just looking for some commonality. And then I was looking over the roster, and I believe 4 of you sat through our conversation last year, right? I think that John Carter, Mr. Carter, is the only person that didn't. And I was struggling a little bit when I was trying to think about, what is it how can I help add value here? And how can I help you add some value? And we've got approximately 90 minutes where we had a longer time last time. So I'm going to maybe power through some things here. If I interrupt you, it's because you've made your point and I want to make sure that we can move on. I'll try not to do that if we can. So, but the other thing I thought about is that things have changed, since then. I mean, the town's a year older. COVID's a lot different than it was a year ago. The fact is you now have a new town administrator, where we were working with, I believe, an interim. I think that Rick was an interim last year when we were here, et cetera. So there's a reason to go through a lot of these things. And then it struck me too that I'm going to ask a question of all of you to fill this out, and don't cheat. But I'm just curious. And this little card, there's one question, and the question is a simple one: is that what's the job of the select board? And what I'm curious about, if you just pass that down,
Yeah.
Jen, I appreciate it. Where we might have some commonality in that, or where we don't have some commonality in that. And the second question I'm going to ask you, which I asked last time, is here you go. Good. So, which I did ask last time as well. In fact, if you, but we're going to do this one verbally, but think about it, is that what do you want to get out of this as a group? And what is it you're trying to get out of it? And I can give you some options in a second, but take a minute, 30 seconds, and fill out that card for me, if you would, first.
You want me to do it too?
Sure.
Do you, are you looking for, the literal job, as a policymaker, or do what I think,
You're not supposed to give it away.
well, am I looking for, the literal job, or what I think is important for a select?
No, what do you think the job of a board of, I was going to say board of selectmen, it shows my age, a select board is, right? What you think it is. Thanks.
Bless you.
Bless you. Thanks.
Sure. Big time. Oh. Hope you can read it.
I'm sure I can.
I don't think so.
I can read Sarah's, I can read anybody's. So, before I start reading these off, just a few ground rules for today, if we could. Is it number one, interactive session? I was gonna have you go around and introduce you, but I know everybody but John, and John and I had a brief intro earlier, so we'll save some time without that. You know, I used to play a little bit, we may get back to that. So, this is an interactive session, I ask a lot of questions, that's how I made my living my whole life, is by asking questions. And hopefully by asking questions, we all figure out what we're doing. Try not to interrupt each other if we do end up in a discussion. The last session was very lively, a year ago. It was just under a year ago when we did this, and people were very good at that. No personal comments. If you have personal comments, make them after the meeting amongst yourselves, but not in this meeting if you would. If we disagree, please do it with civility, which I don't think will be a problem with this group, but don't do it. And then one of my favorites is a lot of I statements, okay? What we care about are your statements. So I feel this, I feel that, I do this. So I statements to help get us where we're gonna get to. So here's what you all said the job of the board was. And the first one, primary job of the select board is to set good policies for the town, but also to get things done through the board and the TA that need to be done. The leaders of the town who steer the town in a positive direction hopefully instill confidence in its residents. The select board is the CEO of the town. Set goals, objectives for town hall as it relates to community feedback and your own experience, and make sure policies are followed that you have voted on by the town. Okay. So that answers my next question, which is, we talked about it last time, which is sort of big box versus little box. And it was this, you all pretty much talked about, your job is to set policy. Your job, and then maybe to make sure that policy is followed. Where, I don't know if you remember, but a year ago we had some discussion that there was some thought about getting much more involved in the minutia, et cetera. But so this board agrees that our main job, not your only job, but our main job is to set policy. Anybody disagree with that? That's what it is? Okay, that's great. So you walk away with that. And when we start talking about setting some goals and some objectives, sort of keep that in mind. Keep that big top thing in mind, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about setting objectives. Okay, so verbally, just real quick, this isn't a test. I'm just curious what people as a group, individually, then we'll figure out as a group, what do you want to get out of this meeting? Out of the next 75 or 90 minutes, what would you like to get out of it? John, I'm gonna start with you, because you were giving me the steely eye.
I think the biggest thing is just to have us all in agreement on what the goals and objectives should be.
Okay? All right,
We're all on the same page, if you will.
okay, thank you. I called you John, it's not your name, sorry. John, what do you think?
Kind of the same lines as Jim. I think that we need to, come up with objectives, but not make them not too large, like to have 10, 15 objectives that we can't get them all done in 1 year.
Okay.
Try to come up with something that the board all agrees, these are the
Okay.
2, 3 that we want to really make sure get done.
All right, so for the first, so we want to set some goals and objectives, and John, you want to make sure that you set priorities within that. So if you have 15 of them that, like last time, as Mark pointed out, you had 3 that really carried the day and you got there. Mark, what about you?
I think I have two main things that I'd like to see accomplished. One is, like my colleagues, I'd like to see some goals and objectives for the board. But we also have a new town administrator.
Yep.
And I think it's important that we set some expectations as a board for him, so he knows what we expect from him as well.
Okay. Sarah?
I agree with all of them, but my overarching sense, what we should be doing is what Jim said. I'd like to see some big agreement.
On goals
Yes.
and objectives, okay. And Jen?
Yeah, I'd like to leave here motivated to get stuff done, to walk the walk and not just talk the talk.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk about that towards the end of the meeting if we have some time, because I agree with you. My question to you would be, is that to get stuff done, do you know what that stuff is yet?
Well, I mean, I have ideas of what.
Yeah, okay, so I heard 2 things, right? We want to try to set some goals and some objectives, okay? And then maybe one of those goals is to make sure that we've set the expectations, et cetera, with Mr. Fennessy in terms of how we want to operate. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I would suggest to you that latter one is probably the more important one to start with. And I would suggest, because in terms of the relationship with Bob and the board and how you get things done, that will help to inform, if you will, what the goals and objectives might be and how we're going to state them. Make sense?
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to. Okay, great. So I'm going to take a step back for a second, if I might. And some of you saw this already. But I want to spend a couple of minutes on this as we talk about setting goals and setting expectations. And by the way, Mark, okay, let me find my order of things here. You'll know that I found the right ones because they're so easy to, here, no one why. Is my favorite word as a manager, as a leader, now as a consultant, and to be frank with you, as a father and a husband, is expectations. My feeling my entire life has always been is that if we all understand our expectations, didn't say agree, if we all understand the expectations, because we'll never agree 100%, you have a much better opportunity, number one, for a good relationship, number two, to get stuff done. And so when we talk about the relationship with Mr. Fennessy, I know whether they call you Bob, Robert, or Mr. Fennessy, so I'm going to call you RF.
Call them all.
Okay.
All three of those.
So relationship with Bob is that if those expectations are set and they're clearly understood, it's a lot easier to get things done. And I will be frank with you, is that a year ago, that wasn't the case. The expectations, there was a disconnect between the expectations of the board and the TA and between the board members as well. And there'll always be some disconnect or else we're not people, but I thought there was a pretty big one. So let's just review something here a little bit. We've all heard the expression about thinking outside the box, right? And you guys, I went through this a little bit last year, so I'll do this kind of quickly. But I think it's important that we think about this, and I'd like to add something, a little something to it. We all have our box. We all do. Your constituents do, you do personally, you do have as a board, and these borders around the box have an effect on how you think about things and how broadly you think about things. And just real quickly, and I've got some ideas to move this along again, because we don't have a day and a half here or anything, if I could find my ideas. We don't have a day and a half or anything in terms of what they might be, but what are some of the things that border the box that hold us in here? I'll give you one, okay? So, to get us started. Voter expectations or voter reaction, right? Right? Most people here, I assume, want to run again and get reelected again. Most people want to serve their constituency the way they want to, so that's one of the things that frame how we think about things. What else might be there?
Any established laws or regulations that are.
Okay, that's a good one. It's one I hadn't thought of. Right, so that to some extent we're bounded by what we're allowed to do. Open meeting law would be a perfect example, right? What else?
Lack of knowledge.
Okay. What else?
Could be our own personal feelings on an item.
Sure. I'm gonna put this one here. Personal feelings, biases, expectations. I do a lot of executive coaching. I can't tell you how often I come across just not even understanding our own, how much we limit ourselves because of where we think those limitations lie, right? Okay? You might have in here, it's the way we always did it, right? This is an old town with a lot of expectations. You've been doing a lot of things the same way for a long time, right? Maybe sometimes there's a time issue, a dollar issue. Okay, there's all kinds of things here that put us in this box. Okay, and the box ends up all right. Okay, I lost it.
Who's got the page?
And I had my wife go do it for me too. By the way, today's my 47th wedding anniversary.
Well, happy anniversary.
Probably wish you messed up
So
your.
what did I?
Right.
The what? You what? So, what happens if we, the reason that it didn't have it is I was gonna write them in. Okay, the reason, what happens is that if we allow ourselves to be put in by this box, is that things happen like we stay as we are. Nothing happens, we get stagnant, we move forward, right? We're gonna miss opportunities. I don't know why I'm writing, because I know you can't read it. But we're gonna miss opportunities for sure. Okay, because what happens is that some of these things just blind us to even have the conversation. Okay? And we may in fact lose faith in ourselves, this organization, the board, or maybe we lose the faith of our constituents because of that. Whereas, which way do you go? This way. If I ask you to look at the box a little bit differently, and I know you saw this last year, that's why I'm going quickly, except I'm sorry, John, is that I'd like you to think about the box being a little more perforated. Is that up to this point, the box still exists, but a little more perforated, so that we understand that maybe we do still have some of these, but the perforation of the box allows bad ideas to flow out, where so often we just keep them in, but everybody does it. It allows old ways to flow out if they need to. Not all ways are bad, don't misunderstand me. I'm an old man, they're not all bad. You know, limiting factors all of a sudden become less limiting because we're allowing things to move in and out. Best practices can move in, new ideas can move in, we're more open for input, most important thing on this right here. We become more open for input if we allow ourselves to do that, and we're more open for maybe some experimentation, which in your situation is not easy, I understand, but it makes that, okay? So I'd like you to take it just a little bit further though, for the sake of this discussion, if you would. If I can find what I wrote down a little while ago. By the way, you can tell where my wife was writing, where I'm writing, right? So. I was reading an article, I think it was from Psychology Today. It says, you'll never find the best ideas until you recognize there is no box. Almost all of the box are assumptions that we're making. Most of them, with some exceptions. John, I'm sorry, I want to call you John. Jim. With one exception, Jim, is that, you know, like again, you do have, thank you. See, the box, see? I didn't realize you turned the damn thing. With one exception, you know, what you're talking about, rules and regs are gonna block you in. But almost all these boxes that we put ourselves in are assumptions, and they're self-made and they're self-limiting. And when you're an organization that grows, you have your own, then you've got the board's box, whatever that might be, and then you probably got the town's box as well. Have a tough time dealing with the last one, I know, but as a group, you can deal with both of those pretty effectively. But I'd like to state this a little more positively, if you would, is that you will discover the best ideas, execute those ideas the best you can, and collaborate most effectively when you recognize there really is no box. We made it up. We made up the box. So for today, if you can, you know, again, we could do a whole day on this, but if you can burn the box today, okay, get out of it first. But if you can burn the box today, just for the sake of this discussion, and see what maybe you can come up with in terms of goals and expectations and the way to get things done, I think that we're in for we'll have a good session anyway, but I think it'll make it even for a better session. So, we're not going to go through that in the interest of time, but we might a little bit later. Okay. So, I guess the first thing, sort of an open discussion, is that Bob has been here now as an interim since January?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Appointed full-time about a month ago?
July
Okay.
1, yeah.
All right. So where do we stand right now in terms of expectations, in terms of your relation, not in terms of specific functions yet? We'll get to that in a second when we get to goals in a minute. But where do we stand right now, do you feel? This is open conversation, get rid of the box. No, you know, safe place. I know we're on TV. Safe place. Listen, if I'm willing to go on TV with this body, you gotta be willing to talk, okay? Is that, you know, where do you think we stand in terms of understanding, not whether it's good or bad, but understanding the expectations between the board and Bob? How would you characterize it at this point?
Well, if I could start, I think Mr. Fennessy, prior to being appointed as the permanent town administrator, was here as an interim for 6 months. So I think he knows what we expect in a great deal. and I think he's done a good job. I think one of the concerns we all had clearly earlier that I mentioned was communication, and I think the communication from Mr. Fennessy has been excellent. I think both ways. I think it's been excellent. I think that's gone a long way to. I think when communication is good, a lot of other problems go away, and I think that's been a good change.
Thank you for that, Mark. A year ago, there was some disagreement about what good communication was
That's right.
amongst you. There was some, not with well, there was too with Rick, but, by the way, I don't know if you all know this, but Rick ended up the town administrator of my town. So, actually saw him yesterday morning. But, you know, do we know what good communication is? Do we agree how often you want Robert to communicate? Do we agree with what things you want him to communicate? A year ago, some people wanted to know every little disciplinary action that might have happened, or every issue that would happen today at a level. Some people just said, please let us know if somebody leaves, just so I don't get ambushed in a supermarket. I think that was actually, Mark, your so.
I think there's a
What does
lot
that
more
mean?
respect now, and I think it goes both ways. I think that's why there's less of a need from board members to know every little, you know, we're not here to actually run the town on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, and you made that clear when you answered this for me, that you don't think you're here to run the town day to day. That's why I asked.
And I think the board respects,
Okay, so you think,
I'm just speaking from what I
Okay.
can see, what my sense of it
okay.
is.
So at least you, and you think you're speaking for most of the board, feel as though that you have enough respect for the job that Bob has and can do.
Yeah.
Okay, that maybe you don't need as much minutia in the conversation,
Yeah.
don't need to get
Let's
into the
hope
weeds?
not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else?
I think the biggest thing that I got out of it last year was the communication. And I think once we solve that, is the next step, what are our concrete expectations?
Okay,
You know, what do we, because I think we just felt the communication was bad on both sides, and we had to get that out of the way, and once we did, now it's like that's this list of goals and objectives where
right.
we didn't really target that at all last year. As Mark said, I think two of the three were all on communication, and that took up most of the time and effort.
It took up most of the meeting, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And so now that I feel, and again, just my opinion, that we don't have a communication problem
Mhm.
both ways now. Now it's time to, let's get down to the nitty gritty, okay, you know?
Yeah.
Not getting into the minutiae, but what are our real objectives? What would I like to see, or Jen or Sarah or John and Mark, from the town administrator?
Right, so help me understand this just a little bit better, Jim. Sarah, might be your name. So help me understand this just a little bit better. When you say concrete objectives, are you talking about, I'll make sure I state this correctly. Are you talking about concrete goals and objectives for the town, or concrete ways that you guys work together? What is it that you,
I think it's more work together.
Okay.
Because, I mean, Jen and I are still relatively new, we're only a year and a half into this.
yeah,
John's new, Mark and Sarah have been around for a while, but the majority of the board is still new.
yeah,
So it's one of those, what are we supposed to expect? Or what our expectations should be from a town administrator?
okay,
I'm still learning.
yeah. So Mark and Sarah, how do you react to what Jim just said? And Jen was nodding her head up and down.
Well, I agree. It's tough to be new. I was new at it once, and I spent a lot of time in the town administrator's office
Yeah.
asking questions. I remember saying that last year, I think, too. And that really helped, because it's good to know what you don't know.
Yeah,
And nobody comes into this knowing everything, even though I had worked for the town. They gave me sort of a step up, because some things I was familiar with, but I didn't know anything about the budget, you know, except my own little department.
right.
But I went to the person who would know.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's a big learning curve.
Yeah. Okay. What
I think-
else?
I
John,
think-
you have anything? I'm not trying to,
No, I'm just thinking my thoughts go around the feeling out process. Obviously, I came on in April, but I worked with Rick LaFawn for 10 years, and the other town administrator, so I'm trying to understand. One was maybe more political, another town administrator is more financial. Now we've got Bob that's got a legal background, so I'm just trying to, I get the understanding of it's three different types of town administrators, and I'm using that more from a learning perspective.
Okay. I'm going to interrupt just for a second, because last time we talked about maybe the advantage of having sort of a orientation handbook for new select board members. Do you remember that conversation?
Yes.
Never agreed to do it, but just for yucks, when I was preparing for this meeting, I went online, and so I found one from the town of Needham, right, which I'll give to you. But it's 59 damn pages, right? And so this sort of comes back to, I came out of the financial services industry, and, prospectuses for investments. There's an old saying that full disclosure is no disclosure. You've got so much, nobody reads it, nobody understands it. And I read through this very quickly, admittedly, but that's how I got from this. But, it might make some sense, to think, just if you want, if you wanted to recycle it, do it after I leave the room so you don't hurt my feelings, right? But that might have some, might have some use here. Because a year ago, and it was 11 months ago, so it was, the same issue was on the table that you just brought up, Jim, right? We talked about that. So that's clearly, I think, something that you might want to think about figuring out, how can we help with that process and make it a little bit faster. I think to Sarah's point that nothing is going to replace doing it for a while. Nothing's going to replace going to ask the questions. Robert, maybe you guys can set up, if nothing else, just a regular time that, hey, listen, for your first 3 months, let's get together once a week or once every 2 weeks, and you ask me anything you want to ask me, or I'll ask you what you want to talk about, whatever. But that might be something worth doing, because again, it came up a year ago, and like you said, you're fairly new, Sarah's fairly new, and
No,
John's been.
Sarah's very old.
Not Sarah, Jen, sorry. Yeah, so Jen's fairly new. Okay.
Yeah, if
So-
I could just add, I think
Yeah,
two things.
anything you want.
At least for me, two things happen when you're on the select board, at least to me, and they're both very important to me. I mentioned it last year about having someone bring something up to you in the supermarket and you don't know anything about it. Well, two things happen. There's the communication that you expect from town hall, because none of us have the time to be in town hall every day. So we don't know everything that's going on. And we rely on Bob, or if he's unavailable, someone else to let us know when something happens.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we get that kind of communication. And that's one type of communication. The other type of communication is you hear something. Someone calls you, or a neighbor talks to you about something. Who knows what it is? You hear about it, something in some way, and you're like, oh, what's this? I didn't know anything about this. So now you're going the other way. Now you're calling Mr. Fennessy, and he gets back to you in a quick, timely manner with the information you're looking for. And that's important, because a lot of times, you hear things that, sometimes they're 100% right. Sometimes
For sure.
Sometimes things have changed a little bit by the
Right.
time you heard it.
Yeah.
But it's important that you get that information and get it quick, because people expect you to get back to them. And I think that has been a real plus
Okay.
since we brought Mr. Fennessy on.
So we want Bob to be proactive in communicating, and we haven't got the time, but if I passed out a card, again, my favorite thing to do, and said, what are the 3 things you want Bob to be proactive about communicating? Do you think that, how much match do you think to be between the 5 of you? And then if I gave one to Bob, how much commonality do you think there'd be on that?
I think a lot.
You think so? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Good, maybe we'll go through and maybe we'll put a few things on the board that, we'll go from there. And then you want it to be reactive on a timely basis, and it sounds like that's happening,
Yes.
if I understood what you said, Mark, right?
It's absolutely
I
happening.
know he's been very reactive to me when I've reached out, so that's no surprise. Okay.
Yeah. It's hard to know what type of communications you want, because different things happen every day, and you never know what's going to happen. It's what's, you want to know as quickly as you can, but
Yeah.
it's hard to put a label on it, because you don't know what's going to happen on a day-by-day basis.
Yeah. But if you have the ability to say, either I haven't heard about that, or I don't know enough about that to talk intelligently, I'll get back to you, and then you're able to get a quick answer from Bob and then get back to your constituent, I can promise you that through my life and of answering questions, that's perfectly acceptable to virtually everyone.
I think
Unless
what's,
it's a giant budget question that you should know, but.
I think what Sarah mentioned earlier about respect, I think that's part of it, but I think it's also confidence, that I think you need to have the confidence in the town administrator that when something happens, it's, that you're gonna find out about it on a timely
Yeah.
basis, so you know what's going on. And I think,
Okay.
I can only speak for myself, but I think the board has that confidence in Mr. Fennessy.
Yeah, well, I've heard two people say they have it, so you get 40% anyway, Bob. So and you know, and those things, you have to earn it, you have to build it, right, in both directions.
Absolutely.
What about communication from you to Bob? What do you think is needed? Is it needed outside of this setting?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what do you think is needed?
I think like Mark said, just open, proactive. If you get like, Mark said, if you hear something, just to ask them. So many times people think the select board, I think Sarah said, we run the town, well, we don't, but, you know, I get asked a lot of times, have you heard about this, this, and this, and has nothing to do with anything that select board is involved with.
Yeah.
But against that expectation, I guess, of what people think the select.
How do you
board-
react to that, Jim, when that happens?
If I haven't heard about it, I will ask Mr. Fenn, you know, I'll ask Bob,
Mm-hmm.
even though I know it's not under our jurisdiction, but still I've been asked about that. Can you just give me a heads up on that type of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's true that we should get the communication, we do.
Okay. All
I
right,
think
this,
that's the biggest thing too, is for all of us still learning what, not to stay in our lane, but what are our lanes that we should be responsible for? What aren't we
Yeah.
responsible
okay. We're not gonna get that done today.
for? No.
But it is something the board should think about, you know, how do we, you know, how do we figure that out? You know, how do we, you know, what that is? First of all, you've got some guidance. If you take a look at your bylaws, if you take a look at state laws, I mean, there's definitely some guidance there that brings you there. But, you know, I've never been a select board member, and nor do I want to be. I've been asked to run several times. And I wouldn't do his job for $1 million a year. Okay, so you guys have so many different constituents. And I don't mean necessarily, you know, Mark versus Mary versus Joe versus, you know, versus Eileen, but just different kinds of people. Your constituents are each other. You've got a constituent in the town administrator. You've got a constituent in the businesses. You've got a constituent in terms of regulators, as you brought up earlier, Jim. And I'm missing a bunch here. And then, but within the voters, all those different constituencies, right? And in today's world, you know, that's even more pronounced than it was even 10 years ago, in terms of the difference in the so it's not an easy job, you know, to be able to do that. So this has all been really lovey-dovey, and everybody's happy. But you know, what needs to be done a little bit better at this point? Do you think? If you want to state it as we've been doing this well, but we could do it better, that's fine. But what could you build on?
Well, I like your statement about people, select board members coming in, having a regular visit with Bob.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's not, you know, once a week or something, just every once in a while.
Okay.
Are you free to talk?
And I found out he doesn't like it on Friday afternoon. He's like calling, I said, oh, you in the office? I forgot.
Well, it is technically closed, right?
So maybe some sort of regularly scheduled, I said regular, scheduled one-on-one visits might make some sense.
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be regular, but it has to be, you know, more than twice a year.
Yeah,
Or
some-
even more than once a month.
So scheduled, so, you know, so you said it has to be more than once a month? It doesn't have to be?
No, it has to be more than twice a year.
Yeah, so maybe you decide you want to do it quarterly. Maybe, you know, maybe you do it every couple of weeks, someone's first 3 months sitting in your chair. You know, it's an easy thing for you guys to figure out what works. And the beauty of it is if you don't like what's happening, change it. Right? You know, it's not a bylaw, it's not a law. You can just change it. You can move forward and go from there. Okay. So, so we like the communication so far. Okay. If I understand what Sarah just said correctly, I saw a few heads at least nodding up and down, is that maybe finding a way to get some more scheduled one-on-one time with Bob. Forgive me for this, Bob. So more one-on-one time with Bob. Jim, it might help your issue and about, you know, learning a little bit more as you're moving in, right? As you're moving along in your job, okay, as you talked about before, and I'm pretty sure that Jen echoed it as well, you know, to go from there. I think that might make some sense to do something like that. This is not rocket science, by the way, thank God, because I wouldn't have a job. So It really isn't rocket science, okay.
And just so people know, I don't think that's just something for people who are new. I mean, I'll just say to them, do you have a free minute this week? You know,
Yeah.
when are you, at his convenience.
Yeah, it would be good. I think it's probably a different kind of a conversation. I think that at this stage in your select board career, if you will, Sarah, the conversation would be different than in Jim's stage,
Sure.
right?
Oh, yeah.
In terms
But I'm
of-
just saying that
yeah.
they're not the only ones who need to do that.
I couldn't agree more.
want to continue
Yeah.
to do that too.
Yeah, okay, that's great, okay. So, what time is it? Okay, so, what I heard was, well, before I get to that, let me ask a question. What else? And Bob, you should feel free to talk as well, as you're sitting at that table too, is that, what else in terms of, to come back to what Jim talked about, in terms of, I'll summarize it, the relationship between the board and Robert and expectations, not specific goals for the town, we're gonna get to that in a minute. What else do we need to talk about in that area? What do you need to talk about?
I think something important to remember is that, we're all 5 individuals. We ran for different reasons, and everybody's priorities are different. So it's hard to say one thing that fits for everybody, because it doesn't fit for everybody. I think all of our priorities are a little bit different, and we all have different concerns we want information on a regular basis.
Well, hence the advantage of a one-on-one, right?
That's right.
If you were in fact to do that. But is it written down anywhere? Those things that aren't one-on-one, the things that we talked about last time that you want to be sure that Bob reports to you back on?
Well, I think that is part of the reason later on in this agenda we have the town administrator evaluation form and I think that we'll discuss, and that's our objectives or our goals for the town administrator.
Okay.
And I think that's where we let him know what we expect on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think if I wasn't supposed to, forgive me, I think I took a peek at that before we started. There's a lot there.
There is a lot there.
There's a lot there,
Don't say
so.
it.
There's a lot there.
I hope that.
Where did it come from?
Yeah.
I compiled it one of the years when Ron was chair. I just took it from a couple of different towns.
Yeah. So the challenge with all those is to either prioritize or find a way to group them, right? I think.
And they are grouped to an extent, but I think it's a detailed job, and I think we all have learned since we've been on the board. Things different. I've said this before. Different things happen all the time. There's things you don't think are a problem at all. Then the next day you realize they're a big problem, and you just have to deal with it. So it's hard to know what exactly is coming next.
So Mark, and to all of you, but so the challenge is not that different things are going to happen. We all know different things are going to happen. We know that good things are going to happen. We know that bad things are going to happen. We know that someone's going to get really loud at a town meeting and raise a point that's going to cause some trouble. The challenge is that how, as a board working together, you deal with that, right? Not agree on it, but how do you deal with it as a board? How do you deal with it as your relationship with Bob and your communication with Bob about it and talk about it, right? I mean, that's the real challenge, and that's where, I would love to, I've done it before, I'd love to have this group together for a weekend sometime and just do a whole team building, communicating thing, and because there's a lot you can do over the course of a day and a half that you can't do in an hour and a half, right? But I would love to do that. Okay, so just to summarize what I think I'm hearing so far is that we think the communication between Bob and the board is good. One question I don't want you to answer, but I want you to ask yourselves is it make sure you feel it's good and not that it feels better because it's better than what it was before, okay? Is it everything that you think it should be? All right, because we tend to look at these things relative, right? We box them in, right? So get rid of the box, and that is it where it should be, and if not, what are some things that we can do, other things that we can do to make it even better, okay? Bob, I think that one of the things that you can do is make sure that you and the board have a really clear expectation. I asked, is it written down, and Mark, your answer was, I think he knows, and nobody else said anything. So, again, expectations are so important. I think it's worth, I don't know whether you do that in open session, executive session, one-on-one, and then bring it to the board, but I think it's really important, or someone like me, I think it's really important that those expectations, you can't, Mark, I want to be sure I'm not giving you the impression that I think you can cover every base. I know you can't. But you can cover a lot of them. Is that what are our expectations in terms of what Bob's going to report back to us? Okay? So that if somebody wasn't told something that they wish they were, but it wasn't on the expectation list, you know, it doesn't mean you're angry. It means, geez, I wish it was there, and I'm going to go talk to Bob, and we'll talk about it later. But it's important, I think, that you guys do that. The answer,
That's a two-way street too. Well, what do we expect from Bob and what does Bob expect from us?
yeah,
Type thing where maybe if it's not, I don't wanna say written, but if we think, I don't even know, as an example, something that we should be notified of, and Bob's like, I didn't even think of that. It was so, he never thought of it, but it was important to Jenna and myself that, so again,
Yeah.
it's always changing. It's not like a set of rules. Because obviously different things come up during the year that something might come up and Bob might think, oh, I don't have to let the board know, I just wanna take care of this. Then you find out later and you're like, oh, I wish I knew about that.
yeah.
Can I say something now? So, to that point, Jim, one of the things, I don't know how much you want to get from me, everybody. It's not told me, you know, I want everything sent out to me. And I tend to send out a lot of things as an FYI, just so that you're on board and you know what's going on, you know? But at times, I look at something and I think, okay, if putting my old selectman's hat on, when I want to get inundated with this minutia, you know, that really means nothing, there's not going to be a action by the board of the select board. It's just more knowledgeable. But, and sometimes I don't send that out and don't talk about it because it's not, when I, in my mind, categorize what's so important to get out to the board, I make that decision, you know, so it's not everything that comes out. It may seem like it sometimes, you know, I get on that roll and I get the extra time to kind of go back through, you know, documents and then just shooting them out. But, so it's hard. It's hard sometimes knowing that I have 5 voices and 5 personalities, 5 different expectations to know what each individual one wants. You know, because sometimes you may want something that means really nothing that you would want. Or you ask me a question, and it really doesn't relate to anything that you're concerned about or interested in or something.
Well, you have to
So
use
it's,
your
you know,
discretion.
you do, and it's almost like a daily juggling exercise. I mean, you know, I did it 18 years as a selectman, so I know, and that's why I probably give you more information than I ever got as a selectman, because I know I've been in the grocery store and somebody come up to me and say, gee, I heard the fire chief is getting suspended. What? What? You know, not our fire chief. And, you know, and then you go back to the town administrator and say, what's going on? And, you know, and get the story. But it is, it's, you know, I don't want to leave anybody blindsided like that.
So Bob, if I might, thank you for bringing it up, Jim, because I mentioned it, but clearly not well enough. So thank you for bringing that, coming both ways up. Is that I was with you to the example about the fire chief, because everybody knows you should tell them if the fire chief's going to be suspended. But, you know, just be honest. You know, it's only been 6-7 months. He wants to do the right thing. Has anybody here ever gotten an email from Bob and said, you know, why is he sending me this? Or I don't care. Not once in 7 months?
Okay, you'll
then-
be sorry.
Then apparently you're doing it right, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, I think you're always better off communicating more than less. And if somebody gets something and they look at it and say, what do I need to know that for? Then they don't look at it. They just, they leave it in their emails and they move on. And I think it's better to do that than not send things out and have somebody
And
say, hey,
that's-
why didn't you send me that?
It's kind of my MO
Yeah.
to do that, so.
And I think you do have to use your discretion, because, as you said, I mean, there's stuff that we just don't need to know. Or have time for.
Right.
But I think it's been really good the way you've been doing it.
And can I say one more thing and then
You
I'll
say
get back to
1,000
it?
more things. You're a
So, on meetings, I like when a select board member wants to come in and meet with, we kind of set up that every month we're gonna meet. You come in once in a while, you'll send me an email. Jim, when you're in there, you stop in and you come in. And same, you know, Mark and John. So, but it doesn't have to be just when you come in to sign something, you know? If you want to carve out a half hour and chat, you know, just call me and we do that. I think that's important to, again, two-way street, for me to hear from you guys, you know, what's going on and what the expectations are, what you need to know, as well as me giving back to you what you need to know and what you, so I'll let you guys go back to your selectmen.
So I would say a couple of things about all that is that I'm glad people feel free to stop in. I think there's real value on having something scheduled. And I'd leave it to you and Sarah and you and Mark and the rest to decide how frequently. And then even in some cases, if somebody's new, you know, I don't want to pick anybody new, but if some new person said, you know, I don't understand this part of the budget, when I come in this week, can you help me understand it? Be ready to talk about it. And so I think there's real value in it being scheduled. In terms of Sarah's point about being, sure.
Can I just say, and that's a good point, because it also would give me a heads up of why you're coming in, if it's specific to a scheduled meeting for something, like, hey, you know, I want to come in and talk about the policies, the drug policies, or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, then I can pull that out and have it ready and get caught up on
Right,
it.
and we've done that a number of times,
Yeah,
but.
yeah.
Yeah. So I would strongly suggest that you do, if you don't want it as a select person, don't do it. But I would suggest that, Bob, you make yourself available, maybe reach out and say, if you want to do this, let's do it. If you don't want to do it, can't hurt my feelings. Second thing I'd say, Sarah's point about showing, would you say discerning discretion in terms of his communication?
Discretion, yeah, I mean,
Discretion.
yeah.
Just to be sure that particularly in this setting with this people, Bob, that doesn't mean that if you don't, that doesn't mean that you communicate with everybody but Sarah because you don't think she'd care. I think
No,
we're
I
gonna
know,
send it
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah.
I think,
Not at
yeah,
all.
I want to be sure. Everybody
That's not
gets
what I
it,
meant.
right? Everybody gets it. And then when you do these one-on-one meetings as well, you know, if all of a sudden you start delving into news areas, et cetera, I think that you would owe it to the group to say, hey, this came up when Mark and I were meeting, or when Jen and I were meeting, and I just want to let you know that we talked about this. Because again, I think that would be important. Okay,
Sorry, can I ask one question?
stop asking if you can ask a question, you just did. Yes.
This, I guess, more to Bob. And again, I was on the finance committee for 12 years, so I worked with all the town administrators. And I was used to going into offices and just walking in and asking questions. So I know one town administrator didn't care, another one kind of wanted to run things through their main office. But I had a relationship with everybody, I could just go in and ask questions. So my question is to you, is that when I'm looking at, say, the financial package that I'm seeing, I don't understand things, or I look at something else that I don't understand, do you want me to call you first and say, hey, I'd like to schedule time with the clerk or the town accountant or something like that? Or do you care if I just call them up and say, hey, go over the financial package?
I don't have a problem when board members want to talk to one of the other staff members for a particular reason. I think that can get overwhelming to staff if it's all the time, you know, to certain staff members, like, oh, you know. So I think, again, talking about discretion, you have to use that discretion on how often. But, you know, something like, say, it's to go over the full budget before a meeting or something. And then I think that would go through me to the finance director and get a meeting set up, you know, between the three of us or anybody else.
And if I get, so I wanted to meet with our new town planner, because I felt bad I hadn't really sat down and talked to him since he started. And B, I just had a couple of issues that I wanted to talk to him about. So I emailed him, but copied Bob. And I had run into him in person and said that I was going to do that. He said, well, if you do that, I will respond by copying Bob. And I said, no, I'll do it first. Just so it didn't look as if I was trying to put pressure on the town planner as a select board member, which I know I would never do, but he didn't know me, you know, so I just wanted him to feel comfortable. And I want Bob to know that we were gonna talk.
Sarah, I think that's wise, because if Jen or you or somebody walks into an office to have a question, you need to be sure that they understand you're not there trying to get them to set or change policy, right? And you gotta remember that, you know, I don't know who appoints who, I read your bylaws, but I can't remember. But if it's someone that you have a hand as a board in appointing, or approving, or paying, you know, that can be a little bit intimidating, not just overwhelming, Bob. So, but as long as they understand.
And it's also
I think
not
that's
our
fine.
job to tell
Yeah.
people who work at town hall how to do their jobs.
Well, I know
It's
you've
not
had
our
at least
job.
one select person who didn't know that, so,
Yeah.
yeah, so, you know, this is clearly a group of people that enjoy working together. I don't think you all agree all the time, which is perfect. You shouldn't. You know, but I think you enjoy working together, and, you know, just be smart, and I think it was you, Sarah, used the word respect, just respect Bob's relationship with his direct reports and what your relationship with those people should be, and I think that would be fine, right? So to review the bidding for a second, we all feel the communication is good, okay? Bob's gonna at least, or you're all gonna at least consider whether or not we wanna do some one-on-one meetings coming back and forth. In terms of communication expectations, my recommendation is, you can take it or not take it, that you all find some time to put them in writing. And they don't have to be, please, don't start, you know, don't have 50 issues, okay? Just, if it's a personnel issue, particularly if it's a senior person, we want to know, those kinds of issues back and forth. Make sure that those things are understood. If you have those expectations, you're not going to cross each other. And if you do cross each other, nobody's mad because you understand, okay, we just didn't understand each other. Now we'll fix it. Okay, I think that would be really important. And this is a great time to do it. You've got 6 months' experience with an individual that you like. He just got appointed to be full-time, right? A month ago. This is a perfect time to do it.
Unanimously,
I'm sorry?
unanimously.
Perfect, yeah. This is a perfect time to have that, to go through that exercise, in my view, right? So I would do that. Okay, we have about a half hour left, and everybody wanted to try to set some goals, right? So, I just want to point out is that, but then we'll get to it, is that I got here the 2022 fiscal year goals and objectives, and there were 14 of them. And then what you all put down on a piece of paper, over the last couple of weeks, there were 16 of them, okay? And what I find interesting is that only 4 of them overlap, all right? So, again, because of time, I'm not gonna go through the dot thing exercise, which I really love, because it visually represents so much to people. But I'm gonna ask you all just to, quickly, and tell me what your visceral response is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how important these 4 policies are, okay? Because they're the ones that overlapped, and then we'll go from there.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing any of the ones that I put in here. Is it just one page?
No, I think there's a second page, maybe it didn't get in here. I have the,
There were 2 more.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah, is that one of them?
Yeah, that's-
I printed that, maybe the second page didn't get in the packet.
I don't, I printed mine on both sides.
Do you have 2 pages, Mark?
Yes, I have 2 pages.
Okay.
As long as you have.
Yeah, as long as you have the
So-
2 pages. that's
I
fine.
got one.
I can tell you the ones
Well,
on the
this is the
second
second-
page if
this
you
is
want to
the
write it
second
down.
page.
Okay.
You want me to give them to you now, and then we'll,
Okay, yeah.
okay.
know the
The
first
one
one.
was to facilitate the building of more affordable housing units.
Right.
The second one was to develop a plan to increase community involvement on boards and committees.
That was mine, yeah.
And the third was to collaborate with other boards, committees. Those are the 3 that were on the second page.
Oh, I got
No,
that.
okay, I only have 2 on my,
The
oh, the collaborators made it to the first page, so it's,
Yeah.
maybe there's different,
Oh, okay.
Different versions.
yeah.
All right, so so here's the 4 that overlap. And you tell me in a scale of, just really quickly, just give me a quick visceral reaction. 5 being that, the town's gonna sink into the ocean if we don't do it. 1 being, who cares if we do it or not. But the first one that overlapped was update the board financial management policies.
5 is we don't care,
5 if you care the most.
or if you care the most.
So Jen, where does that fit for you?
Update, I don't know, like a 2 or 3.
Okay. Sarah?
I don't think they need updating at all, so that's a 1.
Okay. Mark?
Well, to me, it's a 5, because if we don't have accurate financial policies, we don't have anything else.
Okay, John?
5.
Jim?
3.
I guess my point, though, Mark, in saying that I thought it was a 1, is that I think they are good financial policies. I don't think they need updating.
No, and I guess that's true. I think there's one thing that we need to add to those policies that I'm.
So it's more to amend the.
Yes, yeah, maybe the wording's
The policy.
not correct. I think there's one thing that needs to be added to those policies that would
If I change the word update to amend, does that change anybody's number? Up or
Sure,
down?
I'll give it a 3 then.
Okay,
Well, review
Yeah,
Yeah, review.
that, more of that, yeah.
versus update or amend. Review, so that way we can see if, discussion if it needs to be changed.
Yeah, I kind of see that more as just an agenda item for a meeting, like,
Yeah,
let's just do that
Yeah,
at
I
the
agree.
meeting.
Yeah, it's not really a.
so where does
And
that, where does
that's
that
not-
leave us?
Well, that's not to say that, I don't want to leave the impression that I think the financial discussion or what we do in terms of financial policy is unimportant. It's not. It's extremely important. I just think they're fine. And I'm not aware of Mark's particular amendment he wants to make, so
Okay.
I'm happy to have that
Okay.
discussion, but I don't think it should be the year-long goal or objective. I
Okay.
think we could have it at a meeting.
It's an easy one to
Yeah.
click off.
Yeah.
when
Yeah,
if
there you
it's
go.
a goal or objective.
Yeah.
I don't want them too easy.
It's not for me, it's for you. These are yours. These are yours.
The second one that overlapped was develop a plan for the use of the ARPA funds. Mark, what does that stand for you?
It's a 5. That was mine. Well, it must be somebody else's, but that
John?
was mine.
Let's say a 4.
Jim?
5.
Jen?
Yeah, 4.
Sarah?
5.
Okay. To have the conservation agent, this was worded a little bit differently, but I think it was the same thing. It might have been expanded on a little bit on this, the second one, but to have the conservation agent position made full-time, our town is almost 40 square miles, since our open and spaces recreation plan overwhelmingly responded that rural character is extremely important. In the last meeting, open space was one of the goals as well.
Right.
So what do you
But-
think,
But
Sarah?
this is to say that that survey's been done, and the 75% of the respondents said it was important. And having a part-time conservation agent, it really puts us at a disadvantage. Rural character doesn't just happen. You know, you need somebody there to make it happen.
Okay, so is that a 5 for you?
It is.
Jen?
5.
Mark?
A 3.
John?
I'm just trying to get an understanding of,
Can somebody help John a little bit?
no, I know, I remember it was full-time, then went to part-time, it's been part-time for a while. I know there are issues that.
There are
that-
serious issues there.
That needs to get addressed.
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna say 4.
Okay. And Jim?
4.
Okay. And then the only other one that overlapped, that I remember was, or that I figured out overlapped, was to develop a plan to increase community involvement on boards and commissions. Jim?
I'd say 3.
Okay. Jen?
5, because there's a lot of stuff that has to do with like, that's gotta be cleared up with community involvement with boards and committees. There's issues there.
Okay, Mark?
Okay, yep, that was one of mine, 5.
Okay. Sarah?
Well, I think it's obviously very important that the community be involved, otherwise we're not gonna have boards and commissions. I don't think we can force people to become involved. We can come up with a plan, but, you know, it might just sit there on the shelf, so I'm not sure. I think it might be more beneficial for us to sit down and try to analyze why we're not having volunteers at the moment, why people are leaving,
Okay.
instead of trying to come up with a plan and then make people, you know, you can't make people apply.
That's for sure. Though they made me apply for the screening committee, they wouldn't leave me alone. But,
So I guess, I don't know where to put it, because I obviously it's important, but I don't know that we're gonna get there by developing a plan ourselves. I
So-
think we should
so
try to
maybe if
figure
we're
out
not-
what's the problem,
okay, so maybe if we're not that specific, maybe if we just say to find a way to solve the problem
yeah.
of getting increased community involvement.
Maybe if I could, when I say develop a plan, you know, maybe I'm using the wrong wording. What I mean is to try to think in creative ways of reaching people that haven't been reached, to find some people that might be interested in those boards and committees, but they don't know those openings exist. And maybe that's what I mean. Maybe that's develop the plan is not the correct wording,
Okay.
but that's.
And John, so like, that was your idea, so I gave it a 5. And John?
I'm gonna say it's critical that we get people on these boards and committees, so I call it a 5.
Okay.
I didn't give you a number, so I guess I'm gonna make it a 3, because it's important, but again, I don't know how we can make people respond. I think we have to figure out
Okay.
what the problem is
Yeah.
first.
All right. Terrific. So we're going to come back to this, but thank you for that. So, I'm not quite sure what to do with this. I know what I want to do, but I'm not sure we have time. Let's do it this way, and if you, did everybody respond to this at some level? Did everybody have a chance to or no?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I'm sorry, this was a response you gave to Elaine Weston, right, Elaine?
Yeah.
To
She
Elaine,
just collated them.
right.
Yeah, we just all sent our
Right.
goals and objectives.
Did everybody
into a link.
respond? So everybody's got an answer on here at some level? Yeah, okay. So here's what I want to do then, is that we're going to come back to this. So I'm going to go around the table, and I'm going to ask you, as a member of this board, and if you agree with somebody, you can just say ditto. But if I said, okay, give me one level 5 goal the town should have, right? That this board would be involved with, okay, what would it be? I won't pick on anybody, because this is not necessarily easy. Whoever comes up with one first, tell me.
Can I just look at the back of your page?
Well, my first one is ARPA. It's absolutely the ARPA funds.
Oops. I left the house, my wife said, don't you dare write on the board in front of them. So,
So mine would be to use some of the ARPA funds to facilitate the building of more affordable housing units dispersed around town on empty lots or in foreclosed homes. Because I think there's a serious need for that in town. And the last thing I want to see is one single development full of affordable units. I think it's, for the people who live in them, it's much more important that they are all over town.
Yep. What else?
I think
Who
that-
else?
I think that my most important thing is to produce a balanced budget in time for the taxpayers to absorb before town meeting. We talked about it a little bit last year. At the end is just to start the process early.
Has that been an issue, having it ready for town meeting?
No, it's always ready for town meeting.
Well, no.
So help me understand what you mean.
You
here.
mean, you think it should be ready a month before instead of?
So the day before.
Yeah.
Not to go into some other items,
Yeah.
but this is the schedule that we as a town voted in 2019. This is our budget schedule.
Yeah.
It has every deliverable date by every department, capital, operational.
Budget,
There's no questions,
for budget, you mean?
the budgets. So this is designed so that all operating, all capital information is done by March 6th.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's 6 weeks before town meeting.
And that has not been happening?
Before we had this, it used to be the Friday before town meeting.
Yeah.
And then we followed this for a few years, and I don't know what happened in 20, because 20's COVID, so that's, I know that
Blame everything on COVID.
everybody struggled, and then last year, I'm not sure what it was, but you had the interim versus, you tried to pull everything
The
together.
last 2 years, it certainly wasn't. I see that as part of the select board financial,
I agree.
and that certainly hasn't happened the last couple of years.
But
Yeah.
again, I don't know that this should be, this is something that, as you said, we voted on, the town voted on, I mean, we're gonna get back to it. It had, I think that these past couple of years have been a little bit rocky.
Okay.
So I don't know that that's something, I don't think there's any question that we have to do that.
So, forgive me for being so blunt. So if I were sitting in a corporate setting and not this kind of a setting, I'd be looking at Bob and saying, Bob, it's your job to make sure that we follow that with your department heads, right?
It will happen, yeah.
I mean, that's an expectation for Bob to,
That's my expectation
Yeah.
for myself, too.
right?
And
Only because, John, you're not gonna go to the department heads and say, get it done,
No.
right? Based on our discussion 10 minutes ago. So we're saying to Bob is that, Bob, we've got this schedule, hasn't been followed for the last 2 years. We're not holding you accountable for that, but we are gonna hold you accountable for getting it done next time, right?
And I think it's a high, it falls on a high level for me as well, but mainly because of transparency. If you get this to voters, they go through it, then town meeting is not, then no one thinks anything's being hidden or whatever. They have access to the same information everybody else has. They can go through it, they can ask questions, and just
Yeah.
provide transparency.
I think that you're right. I'm not gonna put that as a goal. I'm actually saying I'm putting that as an expectation between this board and Bob. Okay?
And the only reason I brought it up is, it's not brought up and put in writing, a lot of times it gets
Yep.
pushed to the back.
Well, it's gonna be in the
Not to say
minute. It's
why.
gonna be in the minutes,
It gets
right?
pushed to the back, but it's there,
I thought you,
that's all.
okay. So so would you, I can put it up on the board if you want.
No, that's, I'm fine.
I think it's a goal. I mean, all three of us have mentioned that it's a priority.
Okay. So I'm gonna say timely budget submission?
But again, don't forget, this has already been voted on. And I do think the 2 years there with COVID.
Well, and clearly that had a,
And the budget was halfway
Had-
done when we got the new interim and all that stuff. I think it's gonna happen. I don't have any.
Yeah.
Again, we think it is, but we don't think.
Well, he
it
just
is.
said it was.
Well, leave it on there. That'll be a nice, easy one.
So, again, this is your meeting. and-
Softball.
Yeah.
Again, this is your meeting, and I'll put anything you want up there. In my view, it doesn't belong on this list, because it's not really a,
Yeah.
you know, for me, these are sort of forward-looking, what are some things we do to help the town move forward, where what we're talking to Bob about is an execution issue,
Right.
right, on this. So we'll keep it up there for now. What else? What's another 5 for somebody?
The 5 would be the fulfilling the solar and battery moratoriums that were passed at town meeting.
Was that on here?
Yes.
Can you tell me what that means?
Town meeting passed moratoriums for solar and battery storage development. So in the next year, the town is supposed to look into like health and safety and improving how they fit into the town more,
Okay,
taking that year. So not dropping the ball and making sure that they get looked into, and that anything that could or should be changed actually does.
okay.
And it's not just kind of an empty promise or something that doesn't happen.
Why is that important? It's not a challenge, it's an open, it's a
Why is
real
it
question.
important?
Yeah,
Because solar has become such a prominent thing throughout town, and that the town kind of wasn't prepared for.
gotcha, okay. So you're looking for a way for the town to adopt more solar, but do it in the right way?
And just to relook at things
Okay.
now that the town is learning.
Okay,
And
great.
it's not house rooftop solar.
Yeah, I
It's
understand, I
ground
understand.
mounted,
No,
yeah.
I get
It's
you.
a big projects.
Who else has got a 5 that wasn't on this list?
It's not on this list?
I was looking, but no, that wasn't on the 4 that were, that were the same,
Oh,
that were, sorry.
so the 4 were, could you tell us again what the 4 were?
Absolutely. The 4 were the financial management policies, the ARPA funds, conservation agent position, and increased community involvement on boards and committees.
well, I seem to have a lot of 5s, but I'll give you one more for me, and that's to upgrade and update the technology at Town Hall.
Yep.
Because I think that flows into just about everything else we do, whether it's trying to find people for boards or committees, or getting financial information out to people, everything.
I'll tell a little story out of school, your town administrator agrees with you.
You had affordable housing on the other page, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That was your first 5.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, so if I were to take these here, to develop a plan for the ARPA funds, one main goal, to start, I'm not sure what the end result would be, but to address the affordable housing issue in town, right? And there'd certainly be some relationship between those two, right? Timely budget submission, I'll leave in there, to solve, to move forward on the whole solar moratorium question, right? To upgrade the town technology, and then to add to that, to review, amend, update, whichever word you guys decide to use, the financial management policies, to have to address the conservation agent, the open space question, and develop a plan to increase community development, involvement on boards, you know, that's a pretty big list of goals, right? Now, that's not the complete list, right? Because, you know, at some level, you gotta make sure the trains are running on time and all that, I get it. But in terms of projects, if you will, when you think about that list, what's your first reaction?
we can do it.
No. I think it's a doable list.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Did anybody take that down, or should I write it down
Can you
again?
write that down?
No.
But, I'm sorry?
Can you write that down?
Yeah, I'll write it down before I leave for you, okay?
Well, I guess one item on the list, and they all seem doable, but the one I find challenging would be, is to get the solar and battery moratorium to the point where people are satisfied. I don't know what that, I don't know in a year, is that enough time? Is it 11 months?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Fennessy, you've already put together the committees to address
Yes.
those issues, right? So we're already on the path to taking care of that
In
problem.
the timeframe that we set for moratorium.
And also, it's still in the AG's office whether they're even gonna pass those articles. So it's evidently being debated,
So what happens if they don't pass those articles?
and they're dead, you know.
But see, that passed in April, and it's August, and nothing's been done so far, so a concern is that,
Well, we started the committee.
Yeah,
I know, but that was April, May, June, July, 3 months past.
Well, we're waiting for the AG. They
Yeah.
may not-
But we
There
could
was
have
a-
started doing something.
Well, so I have a
So-
thought on that, and when we get to the, later on, when we get to the town administrator expectations, I think we have
Like,
a.
we have these great goals, I just don't want us to drop the ball on them.
No. But we all know that the legislature moves at its
Well, no, this
own
is
pace.
The Attorney General.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, well, I mean the government in general.
Well, it's almost like and I'm not sure if you're gonna go through this. I know a lot of times what we do at work is you have timelines. So obviously within 11 months, that's what the moratorium voted on. So that's an immediate need. The ARPA funds are, well, actually, they're not immediate because we still have up until when to spend that.
They're not immediate, but I think we don't necessarily have to spend them, but I think we need to have a plan in place, and I think
Right.
that's,
But I'm saying it's not, it could be more than 11 months.
Yes, it could be
So
more
the
than-
moratorium might take priority over the ARPA funds as far as the finalization, if you will.
yeah.
I think if we prioritize the goals that we have, is there a timeline? Moratorium has a timeline.
Where's the full-time conservation agent?
I'm sorry?
Right, that number
Open
5.
space.
Oh, sorry, beg your
You know,
pardon.
the budget has a timeline, those things. That's all I'm suggesting.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second, and then, okay. We can talk about that for another minute or two if you want. And then I want to, so. I'll ask a question first. How do you get this done? You said it's doable. Nobody disagreed that it was doable? John had a question about the solar, open the solar moratorium, but didn't say we can't get it done, said it would be a challenge. How do you get this done?
I think we work together with the town administrator, prioritize, keep it in front of us.
So what do you need from Robert to get it done? Sorry, Robert, he's never gonna ask me back. What do you need for Robert to get it done?
I think for the solar, it started by having the appointed
Yeah.
committee.
So do me
That
a
was-
favor, I'll come back to that, I'm sorry to interrupt Jim.
Sure.
Think a little bit more basic, a little bigger. That what do you need?
We don't have a meeting where at least one of those is not on an agenda, because that's a missed opportunity.
Yeah. So if this were a corporation and I was the CEO, I'd be saying, I want a plan. I want a plan that talks about what it is we want to accomplish, how we think we can accomplish it, a realistic timeline. And the realistic timeline might be, you know what, I don't think we can get this one done by the end of this year. But a realistic timeline, so that, what's that provide for you? Provides for you expectations. You can push back and say, you gotta get it done, right? That's part of your job too. But what this group needs, in my view, in order to get this done, is you need a plan. And I don't mean you're gonna, eventually you have to. I don't mean that next week you're gonna get a plan saying, okay, all the particulars of each one, or anything like that. But here's what I think we can get done, to get back to Jim's point. Here's what I think a realistic time frame is, okay? The old saying, you wanna make God laugh, make plans, right? We all understand that some of these things, some things are gonna get in the way. But what I'm saying is that as a group here, you need to commit to this, if you mean this. And if you really want to commit to it, I'd find a way to communicate it to the town. Right? And be prepared for somebody saying, well, what about this, what about that, what about this? This is not a complete list, number one. And number two is that we can't do everything all the time. I mean, that's your answer. But if you mean this and you want to commit to it, commit to it. And it might mean that you marinate with this a little bit. Make sure you mean it, right? I don't think you do it tonight. Make sure you mean it, make sure something else doesn't seep in, make sure something doesn't seep out, or whatever, right? Through, if you get no box, right, things are moving in and out. So make sure that's where you want to get to. And then get at them. And then, you know, hold each other, whoever's responsible for what, accountable for the deliverables, whatever they're due. Does this make any sense at all?
Makes good sense, yeah.
Okay. Before I close with a question, which is maybe be a little provocative, I might take 5 or 7 minutes of your time, depending on what the answer is. What else? You know, we've had about 90 minutes here. I think you've gotten a lot done. Congratulations. I give you guys credit for your openness, your focus. Appreciate it. What else in terms of this meeting do we need to get to that we didn't? Is there anything you want to add to today?
I just want to say, I think last year's meeting went a long way toward identifying a lot of things that even as we hire a new town administrator, we identified that we needed and accomplished. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate your help with that.
Well, my pleasure. That makes me feel good.
And I think
Okay.
we've identified some
Yeah.
good priorities tonight.
All right. I think I'm done with that, except for one thought. I'm just going to put it in your head, okay? You can choose to believe this or not, okay? I don't get rich doing this anymore. But, you know, when I do personal coaching, I think I told Bob this on the phone the other day, I can't remember. When I do personal coaching, I won't take a contract for less than 10 sessions. I'm not suggesting we do 10 sessions, don't misunderstand me. Okay, but, you know, as you know, we all very easily flow back into what's comfortable, right? Whether it's effective or not, we tend to flow back to what's comfortable. Often what's comfortable is what we were doing before, okay? We tend to get tied up into day-to-day. You know, we've got all these big notions here, but if 4 of you all of a sudden get attacked in the supermarket over 3 different questions, right? You know, that puts things to the side, et cetera. You know, I think if it's not me, that's fine, but if I were this group, and such a serious group in such a great town that want to do the right thing, is that I would consider finding a way to continue this process. You can try to self-facilitate. If you'd like me to come back, I'll do it. Find somebody else. I'll even make a recommendation if I'm not the guy. But I really think that it's important for this group to do this more than once a year. I'm not suggesting you do it monthly, you know, but I suggest you do it another couple of times, and so that we can hold each other, accountable for what we're talking about here, for the communication, for the expectations, for this list, etc. So it's just something that if I were you, I would think about. I think it would go a long way. One-off sessions, though you did make some progress at the last one-off. I'm not trying to discount it at all. But one-off sessions are not nearly as effective as some continued work. So just leave that out there for you. Is there anything else before I let you get back to your agenda?
Anyone? Bob?
Well, I hope this was valuable. I hope it was helpful.
Certainly was.
It was for me. I love doing them. And if you give me a second to, look what I did
Yep.
to clean up
Thank
here.
you. Why don't we take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back and complete our agenda, okay? All right, we are back in session, and the next item on our agenda is the Town Administrator Evaluation Form. We've used this form for several years, and I just thought with a new permanent town administrator and some new members of the board that we should all have a chance to review it and agree with it. And you know, if anyone feels something should be added or taken off or adjusted in some way, that we talk about that. So I know it's a detailed form. I know you've all had it for a couple of weeks now and had a chance to look at it. And I did mention one thing while our facilitator here, and so just add one thing that I think needs to be added to this evaluation form in some way. And Mr. Fennessy, I know I've discussed this with you already. So from time to time, we have items that for whatever reason have to go to the legislature or the state government in some way. And I think, you know, there has to be someone in town that follows up on that on a semi-regular basis and, you know, can update the board on where it stands. And I don't know who else that would be beside our town administrator. And I don't see that on this form anywhere. So,
So where would that go?
well, and I was gonna ask Mr. Fennessy that question. I know we discussed it a little bit. Do you have a spot on here? Or we could make up an additional section for it if we had to, with just one item, or we could just add it somewhere, but
It should be in section 5, which is community relations and communications, because it talks about, provides the elected board with reports, et cetera.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be, there really isn't any, it could be in core responsibilities as well, section 3. There really isn't a good spot where it fits, as far as I can tell. And again, it's only one item, but I think it's important that we have someone that just, when we have specific items, that whether they're from town meeting or whatever, or before the legislature, that we have someone that follows up on them, and I don't know who else that would be besides the town administrator. Do you have any issues with that, Mr. Fennessy?
I don't, no. I would use language like "and monitors special acts of the legislature" or something.
Well, maybe you could work on some language that you feel comfortable with, and at our next meeting, we could approve that addition
Okay, yeah.
to this. Does anyone have any issues with that?
No, I think, makes sense.
yes.
Other than that, I'm pretty comfortable with this form, obviously. We're gonna take those top items that we talked about today and fill those in on section 1. Does anyone have any things on here that they feel should be added or taken off or changed?
So I think for section 1, then we should add, since there are 6 items that we all agreed were our goals and objectives, we just make another little column for number 6.
Yeah, I think that's easy enough. In fact, some of them were very similar. I think the ARPA funds. I mean, you had something on the ARPA. I had something on the ARPA, but it was all ARPA.
Well, but mine was using a lot of it for affordable housing, so I think we could keep those 2 separate.
We can keep them separate if you.
Other people might have other ideas about
Yeah.
ARPA funds. So there were 6. There was a plan for the ARPA funds.
Yeah, it was the budget time. It was the whole financial. A lot of different things on this goals and objectives
Well,
were.
he brought it down to 6. That was my understanding.
Yeah, I think he did. That's fine. We can
Because-
put those 6 in there
because
and.
we were saying that we obviously are gonna be getting all these budget timetables down, because as John pointed out, they already exist, and Mr.
That's right.
Benson said he's gonna.
Yeah, that should be an easy enough thing to do to add one more column in there.
Yeah.
So I don't see that being an issue. That's right here on the top.
So it was just the plan for the ARPA funds, fulfill the intent behind the solar and battery moratoriums, upgrade and update technology town hall, full-time conservation agent, affordable housing, and increasing community involvement. Those were the 6.
I think so.
Column 6.
Can I go?
And I think in all honesty, the financial management policies may not even, there's a section 3, some of the core responsibilities of the town administrator really talks about a lot of those financial policies already.
Yeah.
So, we could duplicate that as a goal if we wanted to, or we could leave it back there.
So can we go back to the special acts in the legislature?
Sure.
So I think that would fit on section 2, number 1. Maintain knowledge of current developments affecting the practice of local government management, comma, or semicolon, and monitors special acts of the legislature and keeps the board informed.
That's good.
Okay.
Okay, so I think
Could we possibly, would you be okay if we separated that out? and
Oh, yeah,
Made like
yeah, yeah.
another,
We'll make-
instead
instead
of,
of
right now we have
4 or
4
5.
items
Yeah,
there, we'd
yeah.
have a 5th item and
Yeah.
make that a separate.
Okay.
Any
No, that's fine.
issue with that?
Okay, no,
Okay.
that's-
All right.
That way you don't have to vote it later. So,
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. Ms. Weston, did you get that wording? Okay. Does anyone else have anything on the town administrator evaluation form? Ms. Bogart, do you have anything? Mr. Fennessy, do you have anything?
No,
You're
I'm good with this.
comfortable with this? Okay.
Yeah.
And so what we will do is next year, obviously prior to town meeting sometime, I think it's usually February, Sarah, if memory corrects, we'll meet with the town administrator, fill one of these out, and pool our evaluations and announce it to the town. So, okay.
So, yes, so you were saying that the process is each one fills it out independently, right? And then meets with me independently?
Normally, the process is we go through this and we fill it out on a scale of 1 to 10. Then we go in and
1 to
meet with.
5.
Yeah, it's
1 to 5, I'm sorry, thank you. 1 to 5, and then we go in and meet with you. And the purpose of that is sometimes there might be some misunderstanding as to what we interpret this as and to what you interpret it as. And so we talk about it and then come back and we'll all give our results to Mrs. Weston, and she'll come up with a general score.
I hope to make the dean's list.
Did Bob's contract have a 6-month review in it as well?
I don't
think
believe so. I don't believe so. I thought it was an annual evaluation. We could go back to
No, I
review it,
think-
but I thought it was an
I
annual
think it's an
evaluation.
annual,
I think so.
because you
Yeah.
wouldn't do 6 and then do another one 2 months later,
Yeah.
you know?
I thought I remembered 6.
Yeah. That might have been on Rick's maybe, on interim.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think
I-
there was. We'll review it and find out. We'll have an answer at the next meeting, but I don't think it did. And obviously, this one's gonna be a little less than annual, just because, we don't have, I mean, if it did have a 6-month evaluation, we'd be doing it, in November, December, then doing this one again in February, so it'd be a little repetitive. But, okay. Is there a motion to approve the town administrator evaluation form with the additions we discussed?
Make that motion.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have an appointment to the Carver Cultural Council, Dr. Richard Bunbury. You have his application, I believe, in your packet. We did make Mr. Bunbury aware of this meeting, but also made him aware that this was a tough one to really come in for, because we just didn't know what time we were going to get to this. So, that's where we're at.
So,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Dr. Richard Bunbury, a retired professor of music from Boston University College of Fine Arts, to the Carver Cultural Council. I think he's going to be a great addition.
Second.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
His application looks awesome. I wish he was here
I know,
to
I
say it
do
to his
too.
face.
It sure does, doesn't it? An excellent application. Yeah. All right. Anything else? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. All right. Our next item is to appoint the town administrator as a hearing officer. Mr. Fennessy.
So this is for a hearing officer on disciplinary action. And it would normally have to go to a full Board of Selectmen hearing, generally in executive session or in open session if the personnel would want it in open session. But the department had asked that I be appointed so that we can do it in-house. I don't want to say much about it.
I understand.
Because it may identify who the person is. So it's my recommendation that you appoint me as a hearing officer. Ultimately, they'll have the power to, or the authority to appeal it to the full Board of Selectmen. But it may be able to take care of it at the hearing issue.
And I agree. I think it's a good idea.
I guess I'm a little bit confused from a standpoint of, I'm not the people of the process. So this is, someone has an issue that they want to get addressed. They would then come to you as the hearing officer?
Yes.
Ordinarily.
No, not to get addressed, no. So when the determination is that it's gonna be a suspension or termination, then they have a right to a hearing, the party, rather than just getting it from the department head or from me. So this would be, I would be the hearing officer instead of the 5 board members.
So in the past, it would go to the 5 board members when the
Correct.
complaint was
And they would have the choice to whether to have an executive session versus open session, and they have the right to an attorney, and they have the right to 48 hours notice. My feeling is that this is better because it kind of takes us, any kind of politics that might be
That's-
out of the
No,
picture.
no, that's my thought as well, is
But-
takes it out of the political
Which I'm
realm.
fine with, but if the person supposedly isn't happy with the hearing officer, do they still get to come to the board?
Yes, they-
Not the hearing officer, yeah, the ultimate
Whatever the result
decision,
is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, then they can appeal that.
To the board of Selectmen?
If it's, yeah. And it gets complicated, because if it's of a discipline of a certain level, and that goes to contractual bargaining issues. So, and I can explain it to you one-on-one.
Sure.
So if the hearing, if you being the hearing officer, if this is someone that you have jurisdiction over, is that a conflict?
No, but it doesn't.
Okay. I mean, we talk about one specific incident.
Right now, yes, yeah.
So if this will
You
be a
know,
policy going forward, you'll be the hearing officer.
you could do that, make me the hearing officer
Are we
initially.
voting on just this one incident, or this one, are we voting on the main?
I would
Hearing
suggest,
officer permanent.
doing it for this incident.
That was my understanding, that with this agenda
And
item,
then-
we're doing it for one incident.
For the,
All right, well, that just says a point.
Yeah, no, you're right, The
Okay.
wording could be
Change.
clearer.
Okay,
And if we wanted to in the future, we
Yeah.
could do it again.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so for clarity's sake, there's an incident happening now
mhm.
that you would like to be the hearing officer for instead of the select board,
because the department had requested that it be kept in-house.
because the department had
Mhm.
requested it be kept in-house, just this one time.
Correct.
And it's not someone that you have direct
Right,
oversight.
I'll say it's in the police department.
Okay, because I know that, like, I finally made we had some, okay,
Okay?
got it, I get it. Thank you for asking the questions you guys did. Okay.
All right, if anything else from the board? Is there a motion?
To
on-
move that we appoint the town administrator as a hearing officer in this particular case.
I'll second that.
All right, you have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Town administrator update. Mr. Fennessy.
Oh. Good idea. Too many papers. Here we go.
Could you do me one favor on town administrator updates on future, could you just, I understand you have, I understand you have a number of things, but if you could just make sure, just so the town knows, if you could just bullet point a
Okay.
North Carver Water District update, so we know, even if there is no particular update, just so the town knows that they can expect
will,
an
yeah,
update
yeah.
at our meetings in that situation,
Okay,
okay?
so I have a few updates for the board. So North Carver Water District, it's funny you bring that up first. As you know, the town of Middleborough has connected their water line to the North Carver Water District. And the water's been flowing to the district without any real hiccups. Unfortunately, Kevin Tracy, who's the chair of the North Carver Water District, has submitted his resignation from that position. We are gonna advertise on a website that there's an opening available. In the meantime, Dave Siedenhoff and I will pitch in and kind of keep it running, because there's other issues within that board right now. A potential second resignation. So we're gonna kind of step in and make sure that it gets done, any issues that come up. There was something else I wanted to talk about that, but. Oh, the membranes. You remember the membranes that
How
failed?
could we forget?
So, yeah. So we're going through the procurement process on that. That we had settled that MOU with the North Carver Water District on the return of the money coming forward in the annual town meeting. So in the process, it's a sole source provider of this membrane, so we have to go through a process of procurement to get to that point and then order them. So that should be done soon, sooner rather than later. The North Carver Water District was supposed to meet on Monday, but because of a lack of quorum with the resignation and then one member is out ill, they won't be able to have a meeting. So the meeting will probably be within the next 2 weeks.
So does that mean we haven't been able to order the membrane?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yet.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's still it's anyway up to a 52-week process. I know it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it sure
Crazy.
is.
It's the old flow of goods right now.
Supply chain, yeah. Okay.
Okay, Motello Street and
Quick question on
Yep.
the North Carver Water District. So how many members are on the board now?
So it starts with 3. One just resigned.
Okay.
One is out sick, I'll say, and one is contemplating seriously resignation. So I know what I was going to say. So the appointment of a new member, it goes to a joint appointment of the select board along with any remaining members of the North Carver Water.
Okay.
So if somebody's interested, they can submit an application to the select board, and then we'll process it and have to, at a meeting, a joint meeting, appoint somebody to it.
We have that.
And that appointment only goes up until the next.
We have that posted now, correct?
I think it is, right? Yeah.
And how long is that posted for?
A little over a month.
Okay, so we'll probably plan that joint meeting for our second meeting in September? Okay.
But the question is, number one, if all members resign, is that something that falls now? I know it's a separate district, but does that fall under the Board of Selectmen as right now running the Water District?
The power to appoint falls under the Board of Selectmen if all members resign, and the select board can pick 3 of you to be.
Well, we are
Oh, you-
board commissioners.
yeah.
That's what I'm thinking, does it all come to
Yeah.
us? And when you advertise this position, is this is a stipend? They get, some
I can't.
I don't think so. It's
Some
like-
water departments, the big ones,
Yeah.
offer salaries and things like this, but with us, with this, it's just a stipend, right? That
I don't even think they.
Yeah, it's an elected board.
Oh, it's elected.
It's an elected board.
Yeah, so that.
I don't think they get a stipend for it either.
Okay, so we might not get people knocking our door down.
No, I know it, I know. Yeah. So, and again, the appointment only lasts until the next election.
Gotcha.
And then hopefully somebody will run, but. Okay, Montello Street and Route 58 road project. The good news, it's done. This week, they completed it. They did everything except the hydro seeding. The erosion control has been put into place, and they'll do the hydro seeding in the fall. You'll notice that there's a traffic light there, and it's flashing yellow and red, and that will remain flashing until the property is developed. And then I'll put a signal to that light. The annual town meeting articles at the State House, the Cranberry Well transfer article was amended by the state legislature, as you remember. You voted the approval of the amendment. It went to the House and Senate for approval and passed, and is currently on the governor's desk for signature. The town meeting article relative to the town administrative bylaw is going through the approval process right now. There is a hearing coming up, and I received a notice from the legislature that testimony can be submitted by 5 o'clock this Friday. I think I might have sent that out to you already.
You did,
yes.
Okay. So if anybody wants to file any written testimony, they can.
But you're going to do
But
that.
I would do it as I normally do, with the vote of the board, both at the town meeting, for the article itself, and then the town meeting vote.
Okay.
That showed that it was kind of overwhelmingly approved. Okay, so, and we talked a little bit about the committees. So several committees have been established relative to the town meeting articles on the solar moratorium and battery storage moratorium. The committees are made up of 2 members of the planning board, 2 members of the select board, 1 ZBA member, 1 from an agricultural background, 1 at-large community member, and may add 2 additional members to that committee. One hopefully being a former planning board member who's knowledgeable, and I would rely on his expertise.
A former planning board member?
Yep.
Okay.
And 1 from the Cranberry Growers Association.
Is there a person from the citizens group on it as well?
What's the citizens group?
The people that brought
Yeah.
the,
No, no.
No.
I don't think so.
It's Jen's article.
Oh.
Yeah.
Probably are you talking about the battery?
yeah.
The people that brought the battery
Yeah.
moratorium? There was a citizens petition one for the battery.
Was that John Gasky?
I don't know who
No.
did the battery.
I don't recall.
I don't know either. It was a citizen petition, but I don't know who did it.
The other one is the IT and technology for the town hall, and maybe beyond. I'm gonna look at that as we go through it, and we establish that. Waiting for one other agreement from one person.
Can I ask a question about that? Is that going to be like an official, a working group or an
It's an
official?
advisory group.
So do they need to get sworn in?
They really don't. It's an ad hoc
like a work-
advisory group. Yeah,
Okay.
working group that, and it's mostly made up of employees.
Okay.
Mostly. So we will meet during the day in town hall and look at the issues. Probably be led by Steve Mahoney, who's our IT person, so. The Commonwealth of Mass lawsuit on opioid addiction went to settlement finally, and the town received the first check of $15,918.06 for the first installment this year. Over the 17 years, it's broken up over a 17-year period, the town will receive $458,000 over the 17 years. So the highest year would be $51,535. The lowest year would be $20,700. And a lot of that is targeted to police to combat drug addiction and drug abuse. And it could actually be used for other sources to other
Put
groups.
the school use some of that as
Yes.
well?
Mhm.
Education. And what's the total going to be again?
So the total is $458,000 to Carver.
Okay.
But that's paid out over a 17-year
Over
period.
17 years, yep. And that's what I got for the update.
All right. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Minutes, licenses, topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. We have a certificate of recognition from Mary Ann McLeod. I'll just read quickly the certificate. It's being awarded. Mary Ann McLeod is being awarded this certificate for her dedication, hard work, and extra efforts to the Board of Library Trustees since 2005. And it's signed by the 5 members of the Board of Selectmen. I'd just like to personally thank Mary Ann for all her hard work on behalf of all the residents of Carver. And unfortunately, Mary Ann wasn't able to join us this evening on this, but we certainly thank her. Let's see. We have a one-day special license for the Friends of the Carver Council on Aging for September 17th, 2022, noon to 3 p.m. at 48 Lakeview Street. That's the Council on Aging. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the Friends of the Carver Council on Aging one-day special license.
Right. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. We have a one-day special license for the bartending service of New England, also on September 17th, 2022, from noon to 4 p.m. at the Carver Sportsman Club.
Make that motion to grant the one-day special license for bartending services for the Sportsman Club.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. We have a one-day special license for the Carver Sportsman's Club on August 28th, 2022, from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. For the annual chicken and lobster bake. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. A request for the use of town property for the Church of the Vine for Sherpliff Park on August 25th, 2022, from 4 to 6 p.m.
Make a motion that we approve the request for the use of town property for the Church of the Vine for Shortland Park.
All right.
Second that.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. We have another request for the use of town property, Diana Craig, for Shirtlift Park every Wednesday at September, October, and November from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m.
And that's for martial arts classes
That's
for
from-
homeschoolers.
That's right. Is there a
I'll make a
motion?
motion to approve that.
All right.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Let's see. We have a number of minutes. Approval of the minutes of July 6th, 2022.
I think I just got a change on what I had said on page 2. It says Carter asked why the police overtime is more. I think it was, I asked about the transfer to the police salary budget and about the increase in police overtime. I'd like to make that change.
All right.
Just say Carter asked about the transfer to the police salary budget line item and the increase in police overtime.
All right. Is there anything else?
Make a motion to accept the minutes of July 6th, 2022.
As amended?
I'm sorry, wait,
Oh.
I have one quick amendment.
Okay.
So, on page 1, at the bottom, last line says, Bot recommends opposing this, and he stated he does not feel that these exemptions are necessary. I think it's very important to add why he said that. He said because, like with chapter 40B, no one wants to see, all of our bylaws overrun and thrown out the window, because the bylaws are protection for the town. Whatever Tom said, it was essentially that.
We can look back at the
Yeah. But I
video.
think it's important that he didn't just say, just forget it, he gave a good reason.
Mr. Hoffman, will you amend your motion to?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of July 6th as amended.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. The minutes of July 20th, 2022.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of July 20th, 2022.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain, because I wasn't there.
All right. Thank you. And the minutes of 7/22/22.
Make the motion to accept the minutes of June 20th, 2022.
Right.
Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Right.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain again.
Thank you. All right. Select Board Community Announcements. Ms. Bogart.
Carver Night Out is Thursday from 5 to 9 at the high school. Go.
All right.
I don't have any, thank you.
All right. Mr. Hoffman?
I also want to mention about Carver Night Out, and it's supposed to be warm, so make sure everybody stays hydrated and has fun.
All right. Mr. Carter?
I just wanted to thank everyone for the Carver Old Home Day. I think it went off pretty well. I ate my fair share of steamers. I'd just like to thank the fire, police, and all the volunteers.
Yeah. I should have done that as well. It was a great day.
Well, on behalf of the entire board, I'd like to thank everyone who took part in Carver Old Home Day. It's funny, I met a family from New York who had heard about it online and came all the way for the clam bake, and a number of families from out of town. So congratulations to everyone involved, and I also hope to see everybody at Carver Night Out. I think it will be a little drier than it was last year.
Yeah.
So with that, is there a motion to adjourn? I'm sorry, our next meeting is scheduled for September 6th, 2022. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you, everyone.